All right, the fortnightly frivolity is back. Welcome to the Smell Like Jesus podcast, episode 7. I'm Jonathan Schrader, along with John Reese, Matt Pilgrim, and Ben Brophy to talk about things that are in the news, what we've been reading, and the good news of becoming new in Jesus. Today is April 8th, 2026. And we did not, as a country, go to nuclear war with Iran due to a ceasefire. But this is the first item that we want to talk about in our news segment. Just the reality of war and the period that seems to be longer than it should have been, this political upheaval that we've been experiencing. And as Christians, how do we hold hope in the midst of that? This follows after the president over the weekend using Easter as an opportunity to, I guess you don't tweet on True Social, whatever you do on True Social, throw out some expletives and warn people their civilization was going to end, which is not happened, thankfully. But from that just generates a lot of fear in people. And even I've talked to some folks who have children that are contemplating military careers, and is this the right time for that, given the circumstance and things along those lines? But how do we, as Christians, approach these things and then, rightfully hold on to the hope that we're supposed to have and then share that with others around us? And I think it's helpful that you guys are here because you're all adamant Trump supporters. And so it'll be good to hear
I'm
your
no longer
responses.
suggesting this podcast.
I'm going to need to put up I need to turn off my camera like Matt and then
move to an undisclosed location. Have you felt like a just in the last week or the last couple of days, like a heightened sense of like uncertainty that's been different over the last year, or even the last month of war with Iran?
I just had a pastor friend of mine call me yesterday, struggling with what seemed to be the imminent doom of Iran coming up within an hour or two when he called me. And just like, at what point do we say something and speak up or not or whatever? And he was just really struggling. And likewise, I don't know when it's right or when I should say or not say. Oddly enough, too, I just had a guy come into my office and say that somebody heard me preach at a wedding, officiate a wedding. And the response was, "Is that guy a Democrat?" And I was like, how did we get there?
From a wedding sermon.
I think it was conflated into some other things, but then I was also like, how did you get that? I'm a Democrat. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, just trying to figure out when.
Are you, John?
What?
I mean, we're
no.
dying to know.
So many jokes I want to make.
But just struggling with, when do you post anything? Do you not post anything? Do you say something on Sunday morning at church? Do you not? Just trying to be not delving into those areas, but then struggling with, boy, this seems to maybe cause a response of some manner. I don't know. I don't know if that's a helpful response at all, but it's just struggling through what that looks like pastorally.
I don't know. I think we're close to DC. And so I don't know. It seems to me that we tend to, it feels like my congregation is a bit more, I don't know how else to say it, like kind of numb to kind of extreme discourse. I think because over the past 10 years, it's been kind of every day. I mean, somewhat famously, there was this discussion of, Trump once said something to Putin about, those beautiful spires up in flames and things of the sort. And things like this get said so often, you just don't know. You start to get numb to it, I think. So it didn't even register. I hate to say it. There's certainly military folks in our congregation whose day-to-day jobs are changing. And so just want to encourage them in a busy season, pray for them, reach out to them, those types of things. But as far as the discourse, I think we're just used to it. So it didn't register too much. There's probably something even in that that's kind of wild in the way that our politics have shifted. And at the same time, our particular congregation is not very political, and so um,
Mhm.
it just is. It's not as a big a topic. I think the one conversation I've had was is this in any way justified or not? And so then you talk about, then you start talking about things like, is the initial decision defensible? If so, why? If not, why not? But as far as like the ongoing stuff, I think people are fairly hesitant to say anything definitively. I also didn't catch the comments made next to the Easter bunny. What a visual. I didn't even, yeah, I didn't see it until, I don't know, this morning actually. So I was behind the times.
Mhm. What do we make of that numbness? Because I don't think it's just your people. There's been such vitriol in the last, give it a decade, and so there is a disassociation that happens, right? We just kind of like turn it off. And some of us, just given our algorithm, are still in our social media feeds, are still being fed certain things from a specific angle. But overall, we're not doing the work of like seeing what's really happening or doing appropriate research. And as Christians, is there a burden for us to be informed in healthy ways so that you can, as Ben, you were talking about, you can have a dialogue about, was this an appropriate action? What does that mean for us? Um,
I think it probably depends. Mm. I think we have more information available than we've ever had in human history. I
mhm,
think it's quite a high bar to ask somebody who's working 50 hours a week, raising a family, and has other considerations to sift through all of that
Mhm.
in any kind of meaningful way, unless their vocation is directly connected to it. I think one of the challenges of having this much information is we have far more information about things that we can't really do anything about other than pray, which of course we should. But I tend towards, I don't think walling ourselves off from the world is the right thing to do at all. But I think our bent as moderns is to get over informed and over outraged. And so I tend to think any sort of self-correction against that is not a bad thing. I know a number of people in DC who for them spring break was last week. And so actually a lot of this stuff kind of sailed over their heads, a lot of the back and forth on social and things of that nature. I think that's good, honestly. I really do. It is hard to know everything. We are not omnipotent. We
Mhm.
are not omnipresent. We are not omniscient. Now, pastors probably have a slightly higher responsibility because they have to be able to pastor their people through, issues of the day as best they can with knowing where their expertise lies and does not lie. But for the regular congregant, if somebody said, I just find all of this overwhelming and I'm despairing and
Mm.
all of those things, I would say, I'm very comfortable with you spending more time in the scriptures and in prayer than on Twitter.
yeah, that's good. And what of being people of hope in the midst of all this?
Yeah. So
And moving up,
I'm gonna quote Matt Pilgrim,
yeah.
who probably 15 years ago said, "It's all gonna burn."
I wonder if his eschatology has changed in those 15.
Putting
It's
the
all
movie
going to be
Backdraft.
remade. All going to be
Yes.
remade, Matt.
So, I mean, his point was just that, like, Christ's kingdom is not of this world, and holding too tightly to it is a fool's errand, whereas clinging to the Christ's kingdom in the next world, in the world that will be remade, however carefully you want to say it, is just a much better bet, obviously.
Yeah.
I find myself too even uh, continuing to gravitate towards Psalm 46, and this psalm is such a helpful one in the midst of chaos, in the midst of like uncertainty. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. therefore we will not fear. Like, that's, yeah, God is with us. He's our fortress. He will be exalted among the nations. He will be exalted in the earth. He's with us. He's a fortress. It's where my mind tends to go for help and hope is I can't, like what Ben said, like I can't change these things. I'm in flyover country. Like I even have less influence feels. So this is where I want to keep pointing myself and by people to.
Yeah. And really, Psalm 46 backs up Matt Pilgrim's 15-year ago statement, because verse 6 says, the nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, and the earth melts. So it does burn up, I guess. But the Lord of hosts is with us. Yahweh is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Yeah. Important for us to cling to that and to petition the Lord and, the indwelling work of the Spirit to give us just that sense of peace that comes in the wake of the resurrection. I mean, we're just off of Easter, and, Jesus is breathing peace to his disciples. And that's the best gift, is his first message to them after the resurrection, that his peace would be with them. So we carry that in the midst of the headlines and the uncertainty of all of that. And we I think we appropriately engage as we can, locally first. We love our neighbors well, we serve, and then we make as best we can informed decisions, especially now we're in a midterm election year, that we have voice, thankfully, still in this republic, that we can make that known and see the direction of a nation maybe shift or change. But the most powerful thing we have is prayer, that we can pray for wisdom of our leaders and restraint, and for the safety of the innocent in the midst of all of that, as we pray for peace for ourselves. So, well, there'll probably be more to talk about politics in the age to come. Maybe not. I can't wait. No more politics.
Zero
But
to talk about it. They should
zero politics. Man, what if that's been your vocation your whole life, and then there's nothing more? You got to make bread. Other news: Artemis 2, the moon trip, the furthest humans have ever been from planet Earth. They've just gone. And as always happens when astronauts are in space and they see just the magnificence of Earth and space around them, they end up talking about God as creator. And there's just been a couple clips of the pilot, in particular, Victor Glover, who is a Christian, has been sharing on lead up to Easter. He called Earth a spaceship. So we're all on a spaceship together. And he gave credit to the creator for creating that spaceship. But then on Monday, just before the capsule went into communication blackout, he shared some teaching of Christ that I want to share with us and then reflect on just a little bit. And so he said, as we get close to the nearest point to the moon and the farthest point from Earth, as we continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos, I'd like to remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on Earth, and that's love. And he's saying this moments before they're going to lose communication with NASA, right? And he says, Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said that the second is equal to it, that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so as we prepare to go out of radio communication, Glover said, and evidently I didn't see the clip, but they was starting to even fade in and out as he was saying this. He says, love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon. So, now this is streamed live on NASA's YouTube channel, millions of people watching. And so there is this great truth of Christ being promoted from the cosmos. The creator of the cosmos gets some credit, and he calls us to love. So what do we make of creation pointing to God, and what is it about space that it does this so often for us.
It just seems like the space creates this. You realize how tiny you are.
Hmm.
I would imagine. I mean, we had a debate at our house around the dinner table that Robin said that she didn't want to be an astronaut, and Andrew said, "No, Mom, you want to be an astronaut. Everybody wants to be an astronaut." And she said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Yes, you do." So, but there's how few people have been able to see this, and yet there's this. You get out there and you just see how utterly vast it is. I would imagine, and how tiny we
Yeah.
are, and
Mm.
it's gotta create in people this. Oh, there's got to be something bigger. I don't. That's what comes to my mind.
It's it's funny. Schrader says this happens every time. And I mean, we shouldn't be that surprised. The scriptures say exactly this. I mean, Psalm 19:1 says the heavens declare the glory of God and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Like
Mhm.
Mhm.
when people go to space and they're like, "Oh man, I should think about God." That's because space is doing exactly what it was made to do, to make us consider God.
Yes. It's living up to its function, its ontology, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
How
great.
how do we as Christians engage more with the types of things that are supposed to be doing their jobs like that? The things
You
that
mean in
stir our
creation?
souls, creation, other humans, the creative arts, Matt Pilgrim.
Yeah, I have thought about that aspect of it more recently, spending more time in what's considered to be great literature. It did occur to me that I remember, so I've read a lot of Leo Tolstoy recently, and then I read his confession, which is just his accounting of his own religious beliefs. He ends up getting excommunicated from the Orthodox Church. Like I mean, if he died believing what he said he believed, I think it's probably hard to imagine that he's in heaven. The Lord knows, I don't know. But I remember being actually quite sad,
Mm.
and saying, "Man, this guy who's written in such a profoundly moving way about the life of faith and the life of selfishness and those things contrasted, and who really anytime he writes about death, there is a glimmer of hope in every story."
Hmm.
And I was really sad that this person I don't know, but I was like, oh man, is the where he ended up spiritually is not what I took from his book. And then I stepped back and thought, well, and yet, like even the beautiful creation of human beings made in the image of God, that too does testify to God, even if the person writing it never knows him. It's all
Hmm.
his. To the extent to which human beings in the great arts, literature in this case, reveals something true. It's commonly been said that all truth is God's truth, which can be an imprecise statement, but it is right. Christians can take in that art, or even non-Christians can take it in, and they're forced to grapple with the great questions of life. Like, is there a God? Why am I here? What does it all mean? If death is coming for all of us, does anything have meaning at all? These are the explicit questions Tolstoy grapples with. And in that sense, his creation is doing what it was meant to do by God, which is force human beings to reflect on his character. So, yeah.
I have this picture in my mind when I think of people in space and, whatever, the astronauts on their ship. And it seems like this apt kind of picture of how slowly they have to move and how slowly and intentionally they have to do everything, like going to the bathroom on a spaceship, takes all this extra whatever, and writing something down, everything is like you have to become intensely attuned and aware of like every step of a process you're doing. And I don't know, I feel like that is a convenient picture of like what is, I guess, part of the invitation to gazing upon what God would have us gaze upon is that like that intentionality that forces us to slow down, which like everything else in the world is begging us to do the opposite. So I kind of like that picture of like people that are forced to like, spend half an hour going to the bathroom. And it's like actually that creates this space where, I'm going to stare out the window for half an hour and consider things that I would be far too busy to in another context. So I think there's like kind of a subtle message there that I like that's kind of begging us to slow down and just look, at what is around us and the people that are around us, creation in all of its forms. So yeah.
They probably don't have a cell phone that they can check while they're on the going to the bathroom either.
You may sit there for 30 minutes looking at reels. That's a whole nother story. You should not do that, people. That's gross. But I think that's insightful, and it relates to what Brophy's saying about great literature too. It is really just that because literature requires you to slow down and pay attention and to put a book down and think about it after you've read it, let it linger with you. And there's a pace to things. And I do agree. We live in this meta-modern environment of, extreme efficiency and speed. We don't want to wait for anything. I'm going to order my groceries from Walmart and have them delivered in a half hour. I don't want to have to, make a journey for anything. But it's healthy to slow down and to pay attention, to raise our eyes from the distractions that there's a lot of meaningful stuff that you're paying attention to, but there's often also a lot of distraction that if we just slow down and change the pace by which we choose to live, the pace of Christ's life was this 3 mile an hour pace, right? Because he's going at the speed of walking. He's walking everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're always trying to move so fast, right? We have to have high speed internet. We have to have high speed railways. Sorry, listeners, we have a better pre-show conversation than we do a regular conversation that's recorded. But I mean, if we just slow down, we see, and I think, Matt, you're talking about they're in space and they have to slow down. It's like all they have is time to stare and to see the magnificence of what is before them. And if we take some of that time, I think we'll see it with greater clarity. And that turns into then worship of our Creator and seeing Christ. Ray Ortlund always says, stare at the glory of Christ until you see it. And that's who we want to be as people. And if that requires us to stop staring at other things, it's probably a really good thing to do that. So look up,
Did you
go
guys see
out
the Sorry. Did you see the part when they were naming the craters on the moon? There was this point where there are two new craters that they were naming, and one of them they named after the late wife of one of the mission specialists, Reed. I think his name's Reed, and she died of cancer. And it was this really touching and sweet moment where you can see he doesn't know that they're naming it after his former wife. Sorry, his wife who passed away. And all of a sudden, like start seeing people crying, and they come together to hug. Like this humanity moment in the midst of this unbelievable technological feat that is happening, of bringing everything back down to really what's of most important. It's love God, love other, right? And kind of speaking into that. It's a really beautiful moment. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Love that. Well, that's enough for news. Let's move on to bookshelf. Anything new on the bookshelf for you guys this week?
I just read Madame Bovary, which is a classic by Gustave Flaubert. You're probably supposed to read it in high school.
None of those words. Never heard any of those words before.
Wow. Oh, shame on all of you. It's incredibly well written at a micro level, and it's incredibly flattening of human beings at a broader level. Anyway, I think It's funny what we just said about Tolstoy. I feel like a necessary condition to be great literature is to force the reader to think about some of those deeper questions of life, or at least grapple with something and what it means to be human, just all those kinds of things. People will say this is one of the great novels of all time, but it doesn't do any of that. It's kind of an anti-morality tale where the whole point of the book is everyone is superficial, flat, evil, unhelpful. And so the main character just dives deeper and deeper into sin with no remorse, no thinking twice, no nothing. And it ends badly. And at the same time, there's no hope at all in the entire book of any kind for anyone at all. And I was like, I recognize that this is technically incredibly well written, and I hate it. I never want to pick this book up again. The comparison I had was like, I was thinking of Artemis, so this fits in. It's like a model rocket that's perfectly built, and it goes about 80 feet in the air, and it comes down with its cute little parachute. So it's perfectly crafted. But compare that to Artemis, which had bathroom problems.
3 times.
So imperfectly crafted, but reaches the stars. And for me, that was the difference between Madame Bovary and something like Anna Karenina. Like, yeah, you build a great rocket that has no flaws, but it doesn't take me anywhere. Whereas, Tolstoy did. Anyway, there you go. I don't know what the spiritual message is there. Try to read something redemptive, I think, is my encouragement.
I'll give you a redemptive book. This isn't something I just recently read. I read it last year, but Theo of Golden, definitely redemptive. Highly recommend. Sweet story. Really, really enjoyed it. So I can't remember the author's name, but Theo of Golden.
Alan Levy, but that was on our book list last summer. Loved the book, and I know a number of our people at Reservoir have been reading it. It is talk about and even Johnny, you mentioned it, this picture of humanity where there's this naming of a crater after somebody. I mean, that's what's happening in this book, is that the character is naming what he sees in people, and that there's such life in that. It is truly a beautiful story, and so happy that he went from independent publishing to getting a major publishing deal that has now brought it some great exposure.
Yeah,
highly recommend that book, Theo of Golden. Very good. I've actually started. So I don't know what my problem is with starting books that are going to take me 2 years to read, but I've started reading City of God from Augustine. Just this week, I got an eye roll. I got an eye roll from Ben Brophy for listening. For those of you listening, go to YouTube or the Spotify video and see the eye roll that came.
That's a middle school girl eye roll right there.
I thought
it's
it appropriate.
So long.
It is
it's
very
so long.
But it was written in response to the downfall of Rome. Here's this great civilization that is collapsed, and so did Christianity have anything to do with it? And what does the better city of faith look like? And so just I'm chapter in, and even after the the Penguin Classics introduction of it, I feel like it's going to take me forever. But then in breaking news, are you ready for this? It's it's a book I just bought today that I think came out yesterday, but I haven't started it, but I'm looking forward to starting it. I think I am changing my opinion on Carl Truman. Isn't that crazy?
Oh.
So he's written The Desecration of Man.
Yep.
And I've heard him interviewed on it, and it sounds like a great book. So I'm looking forward to diving into that.
I'll take that as a Brophy was right.
He sounded humble and human, and so I appreciated the tone, and I received it well. So looking forward to that.
I was just in a room with 20 people in him, and he was great. He was super, super great at interacting and taking pastors' questions, and I think he leaned into a lot of what is probably in that book, but he definitely gave me a lot of things to chew on. Yeah.
That's good. Good. Pilgrim, you got any books?
Yeah. I went a little off the beaten path. I recently finished a book called Iron John by like a poet and mystic named Robert Bly, who from what I can tell, was knowledgeable of the Christian faith, but was not necessarily following it. But wrote Iron John kind of about the common wounds and burdens that men kind of carry from childhood into adulthood, and uses a lot of mythology and metaphor and kind of mystical storytelling to explore men and their wounds and how you sort of grow into true adulthood. So not necessarily a Christian perspective, but certainly like a redemptive one, and one about pursuing like a mystical spiritual journey in search of something greater, which I found a lot of like really encouraging kind of parallels. Yeah, in a very like creative way. I'm not sure it's for everybody, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I actually even picked it up on your recommendation, so we'll see
Nice.
how it goes. It's one of the 17 books I'm reading at the moment, so you never know how these things are going to go.
Nice.
All right. Well, I hope there's been some good in what we've discussed today, and if not, it will soon be redeemed as Matt Pilgrim for our Becoming New segment shares some poetry with us.
Cool. Yeah. No, so I'll resist the urge, I guess, or the temptation to over explain the art, I guess. So what this grew out of was kind of wrestling with the siren song of Pharisaism to some extent. So kind of the way that is always drawing us back, despite God, I think, calling us to something better. So yeah, I'll read it. This is called I Like His Old Stuff Better. And I should say, this is not necessarily one of my favorite poems, but I have a deep affection for it because I went into someone's home at one point and found it on the fridge. And so I just feel like I have an affection for it, even though it's not necessarily one of my personal favorites. But anyway, here it is. I like his old stuff better, the stuff from before, when it was just a few diehards huddled at the base of a mountain, swaying and bobbing our heads to simple rhythms of fear and wrath. His early stuff got in my head and in my blood and taught me everything I know and everything I expect from these creative types. But now he's put out his new stuff, and it's beautiful, aged like wine, yet somehow fresh, needing not just its own albums, but its own genres to hold and define it. And yet you'll find me slipping, sure, backsliding to my comfort zone, where the old melodies of law and fear and obedience drowned out the subtle beats of love and steadfastness, drowning the nuance and living on a prayer as we laugh and sing along, but aren't quite sure why. Can you blame me? After all, his new stuff asks me to think and feel and change, to grapple with the undefinable substance called grace that defies all attempts at critique or improvement or imitation. His new stuff is better. I know it is. I only had to hear it once, and I instinctively knew the tune as it rhymed and swayed along to my wildest dreams. But here I am again, listening to his old stuff and loving it because it asks so much less of me. And so that's it. Thanks.
Well, I love that. That gets it, our tension of we want to be in control. We want to live up to something we want to achieve. And the proclamation of the gospel is we are free and we find redemption in Christ alone by his righteousness. And our striving is done, So we cling to the new stuff. I love that. Thanks for sharing, Matt. John, Ben Brophy, thank you guys for another great conversation. We'll be back in 2 weeks for more fortnightly frivolity from the Smell Like Jesus podcast. Keep trusting the Lord and live in light of him.